Chapter 3. Boarding the Beast, Hekaton Primes. Sky was on fire. Anti-orbital guns stitched glowing lines up into the murk, punching gaps in the clouds with each discharge. Point defense batteries rattled like drum fire, tracking invisible trajectories where dropships and assault craft knifed through the high atmosphere. Far above all that, invisible to human eyes, but clear on the auspex, a new shadow had settled into orbit. The Black Legion had arrived. Back in the command bunker, the hololith looked less like a map and more like a wound. Icons crawled across its projected sphere. Blue for Imperial, red for Chaos, black for the void around them. The largest new sigil was a stylized eye, wreathed in 8 jagged points, hanging above the world like a threat. Bullis traced its course with a gourd-lidded finger. The warband calls itself the Hand of the Ninth Omen, he said. Black Legion Corps, supported by mixed-trafficked elements. Traitor Guard, Daemons, Dark Mechanicus. He tapped the biggest contact, the flagship. Speartip is a Despoiler-class battleship, the Vengeful Edict. Varian's jaw tightened. Abaddon's leavings, he muttered. Even a small warband of his gene line is not thrown lightly. Cain stood off to one side, arms folded, watching the rotating hollow of the ship. It looked like every other Chaos barge he'd seen in Zadia's files and Avengers briefings. Spikes, skulls, cathedral towers, the works, just scaled up. How bad? He asked. Gallus didn't sugarcoat it. At full strength, they could crack this world apart, he said. But they are not at full strength. Warp translation inside an active conflict zone is imprecise. Our ogres showed damage along their forward lances. Some of their lighter escorts never made it out of the Imperium. Still enough to make you nervous. Cain said. Yes, Gallus admitted. Especially with this. He gestured, and the hollow zoomed into the heart of the flagship. A red skull icon pulsed there, surrounded by scrolling Gothic text. Daemon Prince Driscoll, the Many-Bound, Varian said quietly, reading the data feed. Formerly Lord Dreskahar of the Sons of Horus, champion of Chaos Undivided. He has walked the path of each god in turn, without ever giving himself fully to one. The Dark Pantheon has marked him as one of their shared pets. Cain snorted. Gods and their toys, he said. I'm seeing a pattern. Varian looked up at him. You nearly tore a Bloodthirster apart, the librarian said. Dreskah's no small thing either, but he is not a god. He is a man who has forgotten that he used to be one. And he will not be on the ship forever, Gallus added. If he makes planetfall, Hekaton becomes his hunting ground. So we hit him in space, Cain guessed. Cut the head off the snake. Gallus inclined his head. We try, he said. Our own fleet is modest. A strike cruiser, 2 escort frigates, a few system monitors, not enough to face a Despoiler class in open exchange. He pointed to a series of blinking blue icons in high orbit. But Hekaton has macro cannon platforms and void shields, fortified bastions in geostationary orbit, built into the bones of old ship hulks. They are the teeth of the world. The hollow highlighted one of those teeth, a ring-shaped fortress studded with gun decks and shield emitters, hanging over the hive city like a chandelier made of artillery. Void Fortress Saint Invigilata, Gallus said. Old but serviceable. Its cannons are the only reason the Vengeful Edict has not reduced us to glass. It sits at the anchor point of the planet's void shield net. So naturally. He changed the view. Dark lines representing boarding torpedoes and assault claws speared the station icon. They are already trying to take it, Varian finished. Cogitator scribes Merlin updates, their mechadendrites twining over rooms. Vox officers relayed chatter from the defenders aboard the fortress. It was mostly screaming and gunfire. The Saint Skitarian security battalions can hold for a time, Gallus said. But Black Legion boarding parties are not something I will trust them to handle indefinitely. If the traitors take control of the main guns and shield controls, we're done, Varlon said quietly from his place near the hololith. Exactly, Gallus said. He looked to Cain. So we cut off the hand that reaches for our throat. Cain eyed the hollow of the Void Fortress. How do we get there? He asked. Last I checked, I can't fly. Teleportarium strike, Varian said. We have one aboard the strike cruiser. It is old tech, carefully maintained, barely sanctioned, but it works. Cain thought back to his sideways fall between universes, the mind-breaking colors of the Imperium. Teleporting makes me itchy, he said. But fine, as long as there's something solid to hit on the other end. Gallus nodded once. Target is the fortress's inner bastion, he said. Central control spire, where firing solutions and shield harmonics are managed. Black Legion will be pushing for that as well. We will meet them there. He looked around at the assembled officers and priests. You all know what is at stake, Gallus said. Hekaton Prime burns or holds here. Pray if you must, curse if it helps. But remember, the Emperor protects, and sometimes he does it with very strange tools. His gaze flipped back to Juggernaut. I will lead the strike, Gallus said. Librarian Varian with me, a squad of my best, and our strange tool. Cain cracked his knuckles. You know how to flatter a guy. The strike cruiser Imperator spear hung in low orbit, just outside the worst of the Vengeful Edict's guns, its own void shields shimmering faintly in the void. In its heart, beneath layers of armor and chapels, the teleportarium chamber thronged. Cain stepped onto the platform, looking around with open suspicion. The teleportarium was a ring of arcane machinery, surrounding a circular deck inscribed with sigils of the machine god and the Emperor. Copper coils and black stone pylons pulsed with caged lightning. Tech priests chanted Binharic prayers as they tuned dials and adjusted cogitators that looked older than most countries Cain had ever visited. Translation coordinates locked onto St. Invigilatus' central spire, one of the red robe edicts intoned. Power build-up nominal. Gallifey's alignment within acceptable heresy thresholds. Cain blinked. Within acceptable what? Varian shook his head. Do not ask, he advised. Just stand still and try not to think about being turned into a column of divisive particles. That's exactly what I'm thinking about now, Cain muttered. Gallus and his squad stepped onto the platform with him, armor freshly anointed with sacred oils. They checked weapons one last time. Bolt rifles hummed. Chainswords growled softly. The captain's own power sword slept in its scabbard at his side, its hilt shaped like a winged skull. Gallus looked up at Cain. First time being teleported? He asked. Well, first time when I wasn't falling between universes by accident. Yeah, Cain said. Gallus's mouth twitched. Brace yourself, he said. It is unpleasant. Fantastic. The tech priests reached a crescendo in their litany. A bell tolled somewhere above. Its sound carried through the ship's bones. Machine spirits appeased. The senior adept rasped. Emperor's light acknowledged. Teleportarium ready. Gallus drew his helmet from his hip maglock and sealed it in place. His vox click was crisp. Ultramarines, ready. The squad snapped to attention. Varian rested his hand on his staff, eyes already dimming with psychic focus. He glanced at Cain. Try not to move, he said. If you drift, you might arrive partly inside a bulkhead. Cain stared at him. That's an option? Yes, Varian said. Try not to choose it. Loving this plan more every second, Cain muttered. Gallus raised his hand. Engage, he commanded. Reality hiccuped. There was no smooth transition, no Star Trek-style sparkle. One instant, Cain was standing on a humming platform, surrounded by chanting cyborgs. The next, he was ripped apart. Not physically, not exactly. His body remained, but his sense of it did not. Up, down, left, right, front, back, all became meaningless. There was motion without movement, pressure without source, a shrill keening in his bones. The warp licked at him, distant but aware, 1,000 hungry eyes noticing the blip. Cyttorak growled. Ignore it! The Crimson Gem flared, a bubble of stubborn reality around Cain's existence. Then everything snapped back. He staggered forward a step, as his body reasserted itself. The world solidified under his boots. The smell of ozone and scorched metal slammed into his nose. They stood in a different war. The central control spire of the Saint Invigilata had once been a place of solemn duty. Cain could see hints of that under the carnage, gold-leafed cherubs carved into support pillars, servo skulls that had once carried data scrolls, now shattered on the floor. O-specs consoles and firing control cogitators lined the circular chamber, facing tall, narrow viewports that looked out over the gun decks and the curve of the world below. Now, those consoles were smashed. The viewports were spiderwebbed with cracks. Fires burned in the corners, dripping molten plastic and slag. And between the teleportation circle and the main control dais, two forces were locked in brutal melee. On one side, a phalanx of Skitarian voidsmen in void-hardened armor, lascarbines and arc rifles spitting fire. Their metallic limbs moved with mechanical precision, but their lines were ragged, pushed back toward the walls. On the other, black. Astates in midnight armor advanced in a spearhead, their plating trimmed in brass and bone. The eye of Horus glared from their pauldrons, now overpainted with the 8-pointed star. Horns and trophy racks bristled from their backpacks. Bolters barked in controlled bursts, cutting down defenders who exposed themselves for a heartbeat too long. Black Legion. Cain saw at a glance that the traitor Marines were winning. They were simply walking through the fire, taking hits on ceramite, returning shots with murderous precision. When they hit the lines, chainswords and lightning claws carved Skitari apart like scrap. Then the teleport flare faded fully, and both sides noticed the newcomers. The closest Black Legionnaire turned, raising his bolter. He had a split second to process what he was seeing. Blue armor of Ultramarines, psychic glow around Varian, and behind them, something much larger and red. Cain didn't give him a second lung. He moved. Teleport nausea still clung to his stomach, but momentum was the cure for a lot of things in Juggernaut's life. He took 3 massive strides and hit the traitor like a freight train. The Black Legionnaire's chestplate imploded. The Marine disappeared under Cain's shoulder, reduced to paste and twisted ceramite as Juggernaut plowed forward into the boarding wedge. The shockwave blew 3 more traitors off their feet. Gallus's squad opened fire in a disciplined volley, bolt rifles barking. Explosive rounds tore chunks out of black armor, punching through joints and visor slits. Where Cain's impact broke the spearhead, the Ultramarines' fire turned the gap into a killing zone. Varian flicked his staff, and a bolt of azure lightning lanced across the chamber, arcing from traitor to traitor, overloading their secondary hearts and setting their ammo belts cooking off. The defenders rallied with a mechanical roar, Skitari reorienting their firing lines to pour bullets into the breached traitor formation. For a few seconds, the control spire became a blender. Juggernaut waded through it. A Black Legionnaire brought his chainsword up in a 2-handed guard. Cain caught the blade, teeth shrieking as they tried to bite into his gauntlet. He squeezed, crumpling the weapon like cardboard, then headbutted the Marine hard enough to embed his helmet into a bulkhead. Another traitor raised a melter gun, trying to angle around Juggernaut's massive frame to hit an Ultramarine. Cain grabbed the barrel and shoved it down as it fired. Superheated energy carved a glowing trench in the deck, instead of a hole through Gallus's chest. Cain's backhand turned the melter gunner into a smear. Bolter shells hit him continuously, sparking and flaring. One caught him right in the eye slit. For a lesser being, it would have been blinding. Cain flinched. Okay, that was rude, he growled, blinking away the purple afterimage. He turned and saw the shooter. A Black Legionnaire with a horned helmet and a trophy rack made of skulls. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. Cain picked up the nearest thing to hand. It was an arc cannon, still clutched in the dead hands of a fallen Skitarius. He whipped it like a javelin. The weapon spun end over end and hit the traitor's center mass. Ceramite cracked. The Marine stumbled, crashing backward over a console. "Clear the dais!" Gallus roared over Vox and shouted commander-like. "Secure firing solutions! Kill anything that touches the controls!" His squad flowed like water, 3 Marines moving past Juggernaut to form a living wall between the main control lecterns and the rest of the room. The others systematically finished off wounded traitors, double-tapping heads and hearts. Their movements professional and lethal. The last visibly moving Black Legionnaire dropped to 1 me, a ruined leg dragging, and raised a combi bolter. Before he could fire, a blade of pure light erupted from his chest. Varian's force sword hummed, its edge a barely contained line of psychic energy. The librarian wrenched it sideways, splitting the traitor's secondary heart and spilling warp-tainted ichor across the floor. "Room secure," Varian said. The defenders slumped in place, half from relief, half from their own injuries. A Mechanicus Magos clanked forward from behind a shattered console, his lower body a spider-like array of metal limbs, his upper torso mostly machine. "Unauthorized teleportation detected," the Magos intoned. "Identity: Astartes. Chapter: Ultramarines. Authentication: verified." His organic eye, the last flesh on his face, swiveled to Juggernaut. Secondary presence: unknown. Power signatures: anomalous. Warp-tate: non-standard. Cain raised a hand. "Hi." Gallus ignored the machine priest's twitching mechadendrites. "Status of the fortress?" he demanded. The Magos turned back to the cracked main Auspex screen, his mechadendrites plugging into damaged data jacks. "Void shields at 62% and falling," he reported. "Macro cannon batteries 2 through 7 functioning at reduced capacity. Fire control logic compromised in Sector Gamma. Enemy boarding actions in Decks 11, 12, and 17. Estimated time to critical strategic compromise, 21 minutes, Delta Sigma." Varian frowned. "Translation," he said. "He means we lose this place in 20 minutes unless we do something drastic," Cain said. The Magos' flesh eye narrowed. Crude, yet functionally accurate. Gallus stepped up to the main firing console. Its ivory inlays were cracked, and a heretical script had been roughly carved into one panel, but the core machine spirit responded to his touch. "Brothertech Moraine," he voxed. "Report. Can you interface with the Saints Cogitators?" A reply came in Binharic bursts, translated by the ship's systems into flat Gothic. "Affirmative, Lord Captain," the Tech Marine said from the Imperator's spear. "I have limited command uplink, but enemy codemons chew at the data flow. I can hold targeting for perhaps 15 minutes. "Do it," Dallas said. "I want every gun this station has pointed at that flagship. Full broadside, staggered fire, keep the void shields on the edict dancing." "And us?" Cain asked. Gallus looked at him. "Enemy boarding parties will push for engineering and shield control," he said. "We hold this room, and we hold the Saint. Or at least buy enough time for the spare to strike." He nodded toward a side corridor, where the lights flickered and red emergency lumens flashed. "Black Legion will not give up this prize easily," Dallas said. As if summoned by his words, the chamber's Vox system squealed. Static crackled. Then, a voice rolled through the control room, heavy and amused. "You presume much, little loyalists." The sound seeped from every speaker, making the air itself vibrate. Skittery straightened despite themselves. One voiceman started to cry silently, his hands clamped over his ears. Varian's face hardened. "Open channel trace," he snapped at the Magos. The Mechanicus priest twitched, then projected a new holo next to the main display. A towering figure appeared, wreathed in ghost light. He was humanoid, but only in the broadest sense. His body was sheathed in armor that had once been Astartes' plate, but had grown with him into something more organic, more obscene. Spikes and horns jutted from every edge. An extra set of arms, ending in taloned hands, sprouted from his back like a mockery of angelic wings. His helmet was fused to his skull, a grinning diomic visage with too many teeth. Behind him, the bridge of the vengeful edict burned in eternal flame, crewed by twisted figures who moved like puppets. "Dreska," Varian breathed. The Daemon Prince inclined his head fractionally. "Ah," he said, "a librarian who remembers my name. How flattering. And Ultramarines, no less. Stoic, stubborn, boring." Gallus did not rise to the bait. "Dreskow," he said, voice level, "this world is under the Emperor's protection. Take your carrion and flee. You have bled enough on Hekaton Prime." Dreskow laughed. "My fleet bled to get here," he replied. "My warband bled to breach your little fortress. The gods themselves have leaned forward to watch this battle. And you think I will simply leave? His gaze shifted, as if truly seeing into the control chamber. And what is this? He purred. Cain felt the Daemon Prince's attention like a physical touch. You are not of this stunted reality, Drescal murmured. You stink of another realm. Old power, focused will. And yet you walk amidst my enemies, breaking my servants, killing my daemons. His four eyes gleamed. I felt you crack Khorne's little pet earlier, he said. The shock rippled through the Imperium. The blood god was furious. Amused, eventually, but mostly furious. I like that. Cain stepped so he was fully in view of the hollow. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of godly side-eye since I landed here, he said. You one of theirs too? Drescal chuckled. I am many things, he said. Traitor, lord, prince. I have supped from 4 chalices and kept my soul my own, even as it twisted. The gods give, they take, they scream, they whisper. I walk between their battles and draw strength from all. He cocked his head. Like you, he said, in your own clumsy way. Cyttorak stirred. Insignificant worm. Cain ignored the entity's offended rumble, eyes locked on Drescal. Let me guess, he said. This is where you try to recruit me. Come join Chaos. We have freedom and power, and all the skulls you can eat. Drescal's grin widened. Why not? He said. You clearly despise chains. You have punched a god's avatar in the throat. You have no love for this rotting Imperium or their corpse emperor. The warp likes you. I can smell it. Varian's hand tightened on his staff. Dallas said nothing. Cain considered. There was a time, long ago, when that kind of offer might have tempted him. When he had first put on Cyttorak's ruby, drunk on strength, enraged by a world that had never treated Cain Marko kindly. When blow it all up had seemed like the only way to feel anything. That time was gone. He thought of Xavier, stubborn even in disapproval. Of the X-Men, of the Avengers. Of idiots in colorful tights who still believed in things like better and not murdering entire planets. He wasn't on their side exactly, but he'd fought beside them more often than not, and he really, really hated the tone in Drescal's voice. Pard pass, he said. The Daemon Prince's eyes narrowed. You refuse without even asking what I offer. I don't care, Cain said. You work for people who think they own everything they touch. I've got one of those already. I don't need 4 more. He jabbed a thumb at his own chest. I walk where I want, he said. Right now, that means through you. Varian winced very slightly. Subtlety is not among his gifts, the librarian murmured. Drescal stared at Cain for a long beat. Then the Daemon Prince began to laugh. Not the faux-amused chuckle from before. This was a real sound, rolling and ugly, bubbling up from a throat that had shouted war cries at the siege of terror. Good, he said, when it finally subsided. Very good. This galaxy is full of cowards and zealots, who cling to their gods like children clutching toys. A being who tells them all no? That is worth raking. His eyes flared. I am coming, stranger, Drescal said. These little mortals will hold your attention for a few moments. Then I will take your measure, myself. He leaned closer to the hollow, his diamic face filling the projection. Try not to die before I arrive, he whispered. The connection cut. Static rushed in. Gallus exhaled, just once. Magos, he snapped. Lock out all external access to firing commands. I do not want Drescal using this channel again. Compliance, the Mechanicus priest intoned, Mechadendrites whipping. Varian looked at Cain. You realize you just personally offended a demon prince who is already in a mood, he said. Cain rolled his shoulders. Story of my life, he said. He wants to come down here. Great. Saves me travel time. Varian opened his mouth, then closed it again. Gallus moved to a secondary console, checking data streams. Enemy boarding parties have intensified, he said. Multiple squads converging on this spire. They intend to decapitate us before the fortress can do real damage. He looked up. We hold them here, he said simply. The next half hour felt like a siege conducted inside a blender. The first wave came within minutes, a mixed squad of Black Legion and warped skittery thralls, pouring through a side access hatch in a hail of bolt fire and arc blasts. Juggernaut hit them head-on, using their own momentum against them, sending traitors pinwheeling back down the corridor like bowling pins. Behind him, Ultramarines and loyal Skitarii formed the tight kill zone, cutting down anything that survived Juggernaut's initial hits. The second wave was heavier, Terminators. Cain had seen Terminator armor before, big lumbering tanks of ceramite and adamantium, bristling with weapons. He'd fought alongside Colossus when the metal mutant had tried one on for size during a mission that had gone sideways. He knew what it was capable of. Chaos Terminators were that, plus corruption. They teleported in with crackles of warp light and the smell of burning air, huge black figures with tusked helmets, trophy racks, and heavy combi bolters. Autocannons spat explosive shells the size of Cain's forearm, shredding consoles and defenders alike. Juggernaut lowered his head and ran. The first shell hit him square in the chest. It felt like someone had hit him with a car. He stumbled half a step, dust spraying off his armor. His health bar, if he'd had one, might have ticked down an invisible fraction. He snarled. "You idiots in your guns," he muttered, picking up speed. The Terminator in his way tried to sidestep. He didn't make it. Cain hit him center mass. The traitor's assault cannon and torso parted ways. The rest of him became shrapnel. The remaining Terminators tried to ring their power fists and chain fists up in time. Cain hit one arm first, feeling the crunch as adamantium knuckles met his shoulder. It was a solid blow. It would have put a Spartan through a wall. He kept going. He slammed the second Terminator back into the wall so hard the bulkhead dented, then grabbed him by the face and used him as an improvised battering ram on the third. Armor buckled. Demon-bound machine spirits howled as their shells cracked. Varian added his own contribution, lancing psychic bolts into exposed cabling and joints, overloading systems in bursts of warp light. Gallus's squad aimed for weak points, their bolt rounds exploiting Cain's wrecking bulwark. By the time the third wave hit, the chamber was a ruin of corpses, wreckage, and smoking armor. Macro cannons boomed somewhere below, their fire control cogitators slaved to the tech rain's calculated fury. The Saint Invigilata spat death up into the void, its shells punching glowing craters into the vengeful Edict's void shields, overloading them in rolling waves. "We are scarring her," the tech marine voxed, satisfaction buried under Bin-Harak monotone. "The Edict's port shields are fluctuating, hull plating compromised in 3 sectors. Keep firing," Gallus said. "Do not relent." The captain's eyes flicked to VAR readings. "Time?" he asked. 17 minutes until shield failure, the Magos replied. 14 until boarding vectors overwhelm platform integrity. Varian swore softly. "So, we either kill them all in the next quarter hour," he said, "or the station is torn apart around us." Cain grinned, breathing steady despite the chaos. "I've had worse deadlines," he said. The floor trembled. Not from cannon fire, from something else. Varian's head snapped up, eyes flaring blue. "The warp is thickening," he said. "Reality is loosening." "He comes." Cain rolled his shoulders. "Good," he said. "I was starting to think he chickened out." Gallus moved to the center of the chamber, planting his boots. "All squads, fall back to tertiary defensive positions," he ordered. "Magos, lock down all hatches and bulkheads. Varian, Juggernaut." He drew his power sword, the blade crackling to life with blue-white energy. "With me." At the far end of the control room, near the primary holith, the air split. It did not open like a gentle portal. It tore. Rents of raw darkness ripped across the air, jagged and smoking. Flames spilled from them that were not flames at all, but boiling warp stuff given a shape physics could understand. Deck plating buckled, consoles warped. A massive clawed hand punched through the tear, talons biting into reality and peeling it wider. Dreska Hall stepped onto the deck of the Saint Invigilata. In person, the Daemon Prince was somehow worse than his holo image. He radiated warp presence like a broken dam. The air wavered around him. His multiple arms flexed, each hand bearing a different weapon. A daemon blade that whispered obscenities, a crackling lightning claw, a war scepter crusted with screaming faces, and a bare hand whose fingers dripped with raw walk. He inhaled, his armored chest expanding, tasting the blood and fear in the room like perfume. "Ah," he said, so much better without the vidpict filter. His gaze swept the chamber, lingering briefly on Gallus and Varian, then settling on Cain. "You," he said. "Cain Marko, Juggernaut, champion of a little crimson god who thinks himself clever." Cain felt Cyttorak bristle. "I will grind his bones to powder." "Get in line," Cain muttered. The Daemon Prince stalked forward, each step leaving scorched prints on the deck. The other Astartes tensed, weapons aimed, but Gallus lifted a hand. "Hold," the captain said quietly. "Do not fire until he is fully committed." "You think you can bait me into charges like some pet berserker?" Dreskar asked, amused. He spread his arms. "I fought at the Cadian Gate before your chapter's current generation was whelped, Ultramarine," he said. "I have killed custodians on the outer bastions of the Imperial Palace. I have strangled Primarch spawn in their cribs. I have earned the favor of 4 gods who hate each other more than you hate me. Do not insult me by pretending you understand my patience." Gallus's grip on his sword tightened. "Then stop talking," Cain said. He stepped forward. He felt the eyes of the room on him. Guardsmen, Skitarii, Marines, Magos, all watching a man in battered crimson armor walk towards something that had terrified worlds. Breskahol's smile sharpened. "So eager," he purred. "So simple." The Daemon Prince blurred. For something that big, he moved fast. One instant he was 10 meters away. The next, he was right in front of Cain, his Daemon blade already mid-swing, trailing a bloody comet tail of warp. Cain brought his arms up. The sword hit his forearms. Unlike the Bloodthirster's axe, this blade was not built solely around forward motion. It was treachery and steel. 1,000 cursed runes woven into its length. It sought weaknesses, metaphysical and physical, wiggling between atoms, slicing bombs. It bit into Cain's armor. For the first time since he arrived in this universe, Juggernaut felt something cut him. Not deep, not debilitating, but enough for hot blood to bead along his forearm and sizzle where it touched the sword. Cyttorak roared. Unacceptable. Crimson power flared, forcing the blade's edge to halt, rejecting its cheating touch. The wound closed almost as soon as it opened, skin knitting under the metal. Dreskal's eyes gleamed. "Yes," he hissed. "You bleed. Excellent." Cain snarled and shoved back, throwing the sword arm wide. He stepped into the opening and punched the Daemon Prince in the face. The impact would have shattered a tank. Dreskahal's head snapped to the side. One of his tusks cracked, a shard of bone and warp matter spinning off into the air. He straightened slowly. "A good start," he said. He hit Cain with 3 arms at once. The Daemon blade slashed low. The lightning claw arced high. The warp-dripping hand slapped against Juggernaut's chest. The claw skated off his helmet, throwing sparks. The blade dug another shallow groove in his dye armor. The warp hand tried to phase through his chest and find his heart. It met Cyttorak. The Crimson Gem's presence surged, flaring outward in a shockwave that slapped the Daemon Prince's hand away. Dreskal hissed as if burned. "You wear your patron tight," he said. "He clings to you like a drowning man to flotsam." "Yeah, well, he's my problem," Cain grunted. They traded blows in a blur hardly anyone else in the room could track. Gallus and Varian held back, weapons ready, watching for openings that wouldn't get them killed. The Ultramarines formed a defensive ring, firing at lesser daemons that oozed out of the still flickering portal edges, cutting them down before they could flank or swarm. Each impact between Juggernaut and Dreska shook the control spire. The Daemon Prince fought with centuries of experience. He probed, feinted, used the flexibility of his multiple arms to come at angles no single being could match. Cain fought like a wrecking ball with a brain, refusing to give ground, using his weight and invulnerability to soak hits that would have pulped other warriors, turning every block into a shove. Twice, Drescal tried to simply hurl him aside with warp force. Invisible hands grabbed Juggernaut, trying to sling him through bulkheads, out into hard vacuum. Each time, Cain dug metaphorical and physical heels in. Cyttorak's decree of no slam against the Daemon Prince's attempts like a wall. Drescal laughed through gritted teeth. "You really are an affront to everything interesting in the universe," he snarled. "No subtlety, no give. Just brute refusal." "Funny," Cain grunted back, ducking under a blade swing and slamming his shoulder into the doorman's gut. "People say the same thing about you, Chaos Clowns." They crashed into a bank of consoles. Screens shattered. Servo skulls exploded. The entire station groaned. "Lord Captain," the Magos voxed over the chaos, a hint of organic panic in his bin Harrick. "Structural integrity at risk. If this continues, the spire will fail." Gallus's jaw clenched. So be it. If the spire fell with a dead Daemon Prince and a live Juggernaut on it, that might still be a fair trade. Macro cannon fire warred again, vibrating up through the deck. The Tech Marine's voice cut through the Voxnet. "The Edict's port voids have collapsed," he said. "Armor breach is opening. We can strike deep." Gallus seized the opportunity. "Target primary plasma reactor cluster," he ordered. "If we cannot kill the beast, we will gut it." Therion risked a glance at the hololith, even as he maintained a ready stance. The vengeful Edict's icon flickered as new damage reports trickled in. Flames blossomed along its flank. Smaller icons representing heretic escorts winked out as they were caught in the fortress's crossfire. Drescal felt it. He snarled, 4 eyes flaring. "Enough," he spat. He disengaged from Juggernaut with a sudden leap backward, his walk-tainted wings flaring just enough to carry him near the center of the room. He lifted his staff hand, the scepter crackling. Varian's eyes widened. "He is going to try to tear the station's heart out," the librarian said. "Psychic detonation. He'll chain it through the plasma feeds." Cain saw it too late. Drescal slammed the staff down. Warp lightning erupted from its tip, not out at Juggernaut, but down into the deck and out, racing along power lines and data cables like a plague. Consoles exploded. Sparks fountained. The ceiling peeled back in places as pressure vented. The Void Fortress shuddered. Macro cannon fire staggered to a halt as cogitator banks died. Alarms wailed, overlapping and shrill. Void shields destabilizing. The Magos shrieked. Plasma containment failing. Gallus cursed. "Varian!" The librarian slammed his staff into the deck, eyes burning. "I can hold some of it," he hissed. "Not all. Not with him pushing." Drescal laughed again, but this time it had strain in it. "Choose, Ultramarines," he taunted. "Save your precious fortress, or try to stop me. Your little abomination cannot do both." Cain wiped Daemon Ichor from his lip and considered. He saw the lines of energy racing toward the core, like veins pulsing with angry light. He felt the Daemon Prince's attention split between maintaining his corporeal form and feeding his destructive surge. He thought about plans and tactics for half a second. Then he did what Cain Marko always did when someone tried to force him into a choice. He picked a third option. He lowered his head and ran. Not at Drescal, at the floor. Varian stared. By the throne, he breathed. The deck plating directly between Cain and the heart of the fortress was thick, reinforced, built to take punishment. Beneath it, kilometers of structural support, cabling, conduits. It didn't matter. Juggernaut hit it like a meteor. Steel buckled. Adamatambians screamed. Bulkheads that had survived centuries of micrometeoroid impacts and near misses from land strikes folded like tinfoil. Cain went through. Drescal's eyes widened as the unstoppable force dropped out of the control room, leaving a crater the size of a rhino. Juggernaut plunged into the guts of the Saint Invigilata, surrounded by screaming metal and rupturing power lines, following the warp light like a blood trail. Behind him, in the control room, Varian clamped both hands on his staff and roared, pouring everything he had into wrestling Dreskerhal's sabotage. Blue light met crimson warp. The station shook. Gallus turned back to the Daemon Prince, power sword raised. "Then we will hold you here," he said through clenched teeth. Dreskerhal's grin came back, feral and delighted. "Come, little pawns," he purred, weapons rising to meet the Astartes as they closed in. "Let us see how long your faith holds when your world starts to die around you." The Saint Invigilata groaned like a wounded beast. Below, Juggernaut ripped his way toward the core. Above, a Daemon Prince and a Space Marine captain crossed blades, their clash lighting the control spire in blue and red. And in the warp, 4 vast presences leaned in a little closer, watching the strange red shard from another reality crash through their eternal game. The end game was coming. Cain Marko, the Juggernaut, had decided to argue with fate itself, again.